Friends, welcome to the first post-election daily roundtable, which we are taping at around 2:45 p.m. on Wednesday. We always disclose that in case something happens during or after our taping that's significant that we don't cover here. It turns out there is enough news post-campaign to merit a return to this glorious format. In fact, there's so much news happening that we did this very last minute, which explains why none of us are in the same room, which is the idea of a roundtable. And you're all spread out across, I believe, the city of Washington, D.C. in different tiny rooms with phones held up to your face. Maggie, Julie, Peter, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I think we have to start with the blizzard of appointments that President-elect Trump has made over the past few days, seemingly an appointment every hour. And just to begin with, the pace of it, correct me if I'm wrong, is unusually fast. I went back and checked the clips. Many of you wrote the stories from 4 years ago. Biden was elected, and it took him about a week or so to make his first appointment, chief of staff. It feels like Trump has filled half his cabinet in that same week-long period. Is that right?
I don't know about half, but he's filled certainly a number of the top roles, and it's not just faster than what Biden did; it's faster than what Trump did the first go around. Trump announced his chief of staff along with his chief strategist Steve Bannon on November 13th, which was 5 days after Election Day. This was 2 days after Election Day that he announced his chief of staff. He has announced picks for Secretary of Defense, for DHS. The list goes on and on. But that's a huge number of major appointments filled very fast.
What's the rush, Peter?
Well, clearly he doesn't want to sit on his laurels here. He's eager to get going. He knows what he's doing this time in a way he didn't know 8 years ago, right? He's thought a lot about who around him he trusts. Last time he had to be introduced to a lot of Republicans he didn't know and then think about how they fit into a government which he had never served in. So he has the advantage, in effect, of doing this from scratch in a way that, frankly, no second-term president's ever done. Most second-term presidents are already in the office. They're not having a whole new government started from scratch, in effect, after an election the way this one has, but he has the advantage of having had 4 years of experience in that way.
All right, well, we can't cover all these appointments. There are simply too many of them, so we're going to focus on just a few that really begin to tell us about Trump's priorities in the second presidency and his approach to governing. So I want to begin with two people whose portfolio will be heavily focused on immigration: Stephen Miller and Tom Homan. Julie, you know a lot about Stephen Miller because you covered immigration heavily during the first Trump presidency.
Right. And Stephen Miller was really sort of the architect of a lot of the immigration policies and really the whole sort of language and vision for immigration that Trump brought, not only during the campaign, but in the very beginning of his first term of his presidency, when, Miller led a very sort of aggressive, all-encompassing effort to try to get a bunch of executive orders and a bunch of policy on the track before Trump came into office. We all remember the Muslim ban. There were executive orders that had to do with sanctuary cities and cracking down in various ways. And then, of course, starting the initial stages of this Build the Wall plan that never actually reached fruition. But he really made it his business to figure out ways to pull the levers that Trump would need to pull in order to massively change the way immigration happens in this country. Mm-hmm. And what we saw at the beginning of his first term was he ran into a lot of obstacles. It was very clear very quickly that some of the stuff just couldn't happen in the way that Miller was trying to make it happen and that Trump wanted to see. But he has all of that experience under his belt from the first term. And I think we could expect that to be, very much his portfolio. Again, he's learned a lot of lessons about how government works and how you would go about implementing those things.
Peter, Miller's job in the first term was senior advisor to the president. Now he's got a big promotion, right? Deputy White House chief of staff. So given what Julie just said, should we expect that everything she just said is going to basically be on steroids?
Well, yeah. Again, what they can do, first of all, is click back on a lot of the things that Joe Biden clicked off, right? They went through 4 years worth of crafting orders and crafting policies that took them time to figure out, took them time to lawyer, took them time to understand how the bureaucracy worked. And of course, Joe Biden comes in. He didn't change all of them, but he did change a lot of them. And they have the advantage now on January 20th of being much more ready to do what they want to do. The Muslim ban that Julie just referenced was such a disaster the first time around because they had no clue what they were doing. Lawyers were talking to each other, but they weren't talking to the Justice Department, which normally vets these kinds of things. They suddenly announced they're going to do it at the Pentagon because he liked the symbolism of it, but they were literally still crafting and editing this order as they were driving in the motorcade over to the Pentagon. At the last second, one of his aides actually is handwriting adjustments to the order he's going to sign by pen on the order before he puts his signature on it. So it's not going to be, hopefully, or from their point of view, hopefully it's not going to be as chaotic as that. They have a better sense of how to do it this time. But we'll see. Obviously, chaos does tend to follow Trump wherever he goes. But they have the advantage of that 4 years experience.
Now let's talk about Tom Homan. And I think the best way to introduce our listeners to him, he's going to be Trump's border czar, is to play a piece of tape from an appearance he made last year at the Conservative Political Action Committee's annual meeting just outside Washington, where he talked about his zero tolerance policy, which he created with Stephen Miller in the first Trump presidency. And in particular, he had just been asked about child separation, which was a component of the zero tolerance policy. This is what he said.
I wake up every day pissed off because this administration destroyed the most secure border in our lifetime, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about the family separation. And I'm still being sued over that, so come get me. I don't give a shit, right? Bottom line is, we enforce the law.
Maggie, what do we make of this kind of rhetoric? That was during a campaign where he wanted Trump to become president, and he's critiquing Biden's policies. That rhetoric is now the man who's overseeing the border and defending child separation, which a federal judge struck down during Trump's presidency as illegal. He's saying, I have no problems with it.
Julie's point about Stephen Miller's role, I think, is the right one, Michael. He is running all of this. He will work very closely with Tom Homan. Homan is a hardliner. He is very clear about this. He was very pro family separation as a policy. He pushed it for years before Donald Trump was in office, and then once he was in office, saw it as a very effective deterrent. Donald Trump moved off of that after negative press, and frankly, negative press coverage may still be one of the few guardrails that Donald Trump is responsive to. I think that could stay the same in this White House. But Homan is moving very quickly. He talked about this on Fox News earlier this week, that they are going to go after sanctuary cities to try to have an impact there, such as New York, which has faced a big influx of migrants, and which Mayor Eric Adams has been very vocal about, and much more on the side of Donald Trump than President Biden.
Surprisingly so for a Democrat.
Correct. But I think that you will see there are a number of Democrats who in major cities, in blue states, who are concerned about this. And so I think that you are going to see Homan, maybe he won't be quite so colorful as he was in that speech, but I think that you are going to see him lean in to what he plans to do, because the feeling in the incoming Trump administration is, unlike 2016, where he certainly campaigned on a ban on Muslims entering the country, that mass deportations came pretty late as a concept in that campaign. He talked about a border wall mostly. Mass deportations were fall of 2016 on. This campaign, he has been talking about the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history for over a year. And he won the popular vote, and he won the Electoral College. And so they believe that they are going in with a majority of people voting for this vision that Trump has articulated. And Homan is going to talk about that and try to implement it as aggressively as possible.